Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is time for Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. And right now, we got a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. And I got a great guest for you today. We're going to talk about sales, we're going to talk about strategy, we're going to talk about a really different approach to maybe some of the same old things that you have been doing. You are going to walk away with not only some new ideas, but really motivated to do what most people think is impossible, and that is take action. I do not want to waste another minute. I am here with a salesman on fire. Carson, welcome to the show.
Meredith, it's awesome to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, we were back there in the green room really talking. We're recording this end of February 2025. And I don't know in my lifetime if I can remember so much shift
Mm.
from, let's say, November 2024. I mean, it is a completely different marketplace. Would you not agree?
Couldn't agree more. We're definitely living it, and I think it's critical, that we keep a steady hand on the wheel. We'll talk about some of those strategies today, but really all we can do is control what we can control. Sometimes that shrinks in times like this, but we still have to do it.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in the sales landscape right now. Well, wait a minute. Before you do that, I probably jumped the gun. Your story is so fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about, I mean, here you are. I mean, you're about to hear from a legend who has headed up sales teams. He's currently doing it at Microsoft, but AT&T, at Verizon. I mean, some of the biggest companies out there. How'd you get there?
I'm a lucky guy. No, it's being very opportunistic and intentional about forging my path. And frankly, Meredith, it's been a lot of relationships. I actually literally just wrapped an internal talk about personal branding as well, and how you can your career trajectory, your sales career. These are not straight lines. A sales cycle is never a straight line, and so I think being able to embrace some of the uncertainty and the ambiguity, but frankly, learning from losses and failure, never ceasing to get back up, go into the game, taking strategic risks. And I always like to say that my job really begins when somebody says that can't be done, that's impossible, or don't bother. I try to do the things that others don't do or won't do for whatever reason. And frankly, leaning in at every stage of the sales cycle to be cognizant of probability, based on whatever my outreach is or however I react and respond at certain times in the cycle, whether, I've got momentum or somebody's ghosting me or I'm trying to close the deal. There are different activities that you can do that have different probabilities of success. So really just being a student of the game, that's what's gotten me to where I am.
I love the words that because, I interview so many successful people like you, and the words that really pop out that I hear over and over again is number one, opportunistic. I heard a great phrase the other day. I was listening to a podcast and somebody said the definition of poor is passing over opportunities repetitively. And I thought that I probably listened to it probably about a week ago and I've not forgotten it. But being opportunistic is just being, okay, there's an opportunity in front of me. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'll give it a try. And then doing what other people are not willing to do.
That's it. It's like Hank Aaron, the home run champ. He used to say when he got into slumps, keep swinging.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to do as salespeople. The greats, they miss their shots or whatever it is. We got to keep shooting. We got to learn and we got to fire a better shot. But if you do those things and you're intentional and you learn from where things went awry before so that you can see around corners better the next time, those things give you a higher probability of success. I just keep going after it and I keep studying what works, what doesn't, where can I double down on the things that worked last year and where can I maybe tweak some of the things that might not have so that I can do it better. Studying, what are some of these time sucks? How can I have better discipline around my schedule and time management? All of those elements that we can control, being very meticulous about that process. I am all about people and process. Know the people you work for, with, the people you serve, the customers that you support, that you add value for, and then really just be crisp on execution of process. I mean, these things have served me well.
So I'm really interested. I want to talk a moment about personal brand because I want to talk about your newest book, but I also want to talk about some of your past books. I mean, you've got a really great collection with really meaty information in there. But why? Like here you're working, like if I have ever seen a salesperson who could opt out of doing a brand, it would be you. You work for some heavy branded companies. I mean, everybody knows Verizon, everybody knows AT&T, everybody knows Microsoft, and I feel like far too often salespeople they jump over the important. They feel like branding is something that belongs to the company. So how did you discover that? Why did you go down, that avenue? And what is the value of a personal brand? Why does it matter?
It's an amazing question. I was literally the stat that I quoted at the beginning of the presentation that I just did on branding was that 70% of employers actually place more emphasis on someone's personal brand than they do on a resume. And you're going to be looked up. You're going to be looked up by your customer, your target prospect. You're going to be looked up by your future employer. And so it's critical. Again, go back to the what we can control. You can control the things that your brand says about you. And, I've done a lot of studying and reading over the last several years. One of the biggest books that resonated with me was The Jolt Effect by Matt Dixon and Ted
Yeah,
McKenna.
such a
I had Matt on my
great one.
podcast a while back, and yeah, it's game changing because it's all about the risk factor. We've thought for so long that we've got to attack FOMO, and it's really about fear of messing up, not fear of
Yeah.
missing out. And so,
Huh, right.
it is, and so when you think about like myself as a brand, the power that you have in de-risking your next hiring manager's decision, or in de-risking, I work for Microsoft. My customers can buy cloud from anywhere. What's going to be the difference maker? It's going to be me. It's going to be the unique inherent value
Yeah.
that I can bring them, the relationships that I can create, the resources that I can bring to bear, the internal selling that I'm going to do on their behalf. That's the difference maker. That is why I can earn the relationships that maybe my competitors can't. And so all of those things build momentum in your brand. Now, when I started my brand journey 15 years ago, it was, bare bones. It didn't look like it does today. I like to call it like this little snowball that became an avalanche. You keep adding and making deposits into your career journey and into your brand. You're going to accumulate experiences. You're going to accumulate great relationships, and you've got to be intentional about that. I'm always sharpening my axe, and I want to be able to showcase some of these experiences that I've been able to have in my time. And what's great about that, Meredith, is over time, you're going to be able to showcase these things that ultimately, like whatever you want to use your brand for, if it's, your career, you can become the obvious choice for what you want to do next. Now, don't get me wrong, just because you're the obvious choice doesn't mean you're going to get it. I've been runner up many, many times. I've applied to 3,058 jobs in my career that I did not get, but I am successful because I keep going after it. I keep going out and connecting, creating relationships. I've generated over $1 billion in revenue that never would have existed if I hadn't used LinkedIn to meet the C-suite with relationships that nobody in my organization had. I've struck out, I've swung and missed, but I'm intentional about going after the relationships that I know I need to do what I need to get done. And that's the power of brand, whether it's as a salesperson, as a leader, or in your career.
Yeah, and I think the, thing that salespeople miss, business owners miss, anybody miss, is you have a brand whether you do anything with that brand or not. I went to go look up somebody today, and they haven't posted it on LinkedIn, and it said, like, something like a year, and there was no picture there, and I only have X amount of time in a day to make sales calls. I just passed right over. It's a great company. It's an unbelievable company. I don't have time for that. Like, I can just tell right now. Now, I could be 100% wrong, but that's how powerful brand is because you're starting to tell people, about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's probability factor. I mean,
Right.
is that a lucrative potential conversation? Like I always like to say too, a lot of salespeople, they go after their quota or they go after a result. I don't. Results are a byproduct of relationships. Deals happen because of relationships. Relationships happen because you earned a conversation and you earned the right to be the trusted advisor. And so I focus on going out and having those conversations. If somebody's out there and don't have a picture, they're not active on LinkedIn, the probability of me getting that meeting, no matter how great my message is low. So it's not a viable path as a salesperson who has a limited amount of time to go after that. It's much better to go fishing where there's a lot of fish that look like what you want to be going after. They've got the profile, they're active on LinkedIn, they want to be thought leaders. I can't tell you how many times I've leveraged LinkedIn to go out and create a dialogue, not because I sent some award winning message, but because I looked at their profile, I saw what they were passionate about and what they loved, and they were brilliant. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I've got somebody brilliant on my side that I could introduce this person to. I think we could have a very valuable connection here. We could learn a lot from you. You're a thought leader. Let's create this dialogue. And then 6 months later, we ended up selling an 8-figure deal. Like it's think about the relationship. Don't think about the result or the deal or the outcome that you want.
What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing in the sales market today?
There's so much ambiguity, Meredith. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of, and it's prevalent. It's in our face. I mean, people one way or another are swayed and influenced by, what they're seeing on social media, what they're seeing in the news. And so, when things like that happen, when there's uncertainty, it makes people even less likely to desire making risks, no matter how strategic they are. Now, some people, and I think we talked about this in the green room. Like some people are leaning in that moment of risk. They're anticipating the risk. I liken it to like when I was selling Yellow Pages advertising in 2008 in the city of Detroit, and I think about the pandemic when I was in the healthcare division of my company. You can't always anticipate some of these things, but you can lean in and try to create relationships. Your probability of creating a relationship might go down. The conversations might look different. But like we've got a full dance card right now. And it's frankly because we're going out and creating relationships based on where we can be of unique value during this time. You got to listen. You got to see at the pulse of what matters to people. And what's amazing is nowadays with AI, with different marketing insights, with sales navigator news feeds, with subscribing to business journals or email alerts, you can stay at the pulse of what matters to your customer organizations, and you can reach out with something that's actually really pertinent, and you can help them navigate through this uncertain time. And if you lean in challenging situations with customers, I mean, you got a friend for life. I mean, you basically, that's where in the crucible, that is where these forever bonds are formed.
It's so true. As salespeople, your best marketplace is the one that is completely disrupted
Mhm.
because A, your competitors are not going to show up, and B, your customers are going to remember, who does. Now, Carson, you wrote this unbelievable book. You've written more than a few, but I just loved A Salesman on Fire. And you followed it up with, I can see it right back there on your bookshelf, The Show Must Go On. Now, this was such a different book for you. Talk a little bit about Salesman on Fire and then the transition to, The Show Must Go On. Why write the book, but why also take such a different approach to it?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And look, there's so many great sales books out there. I never wanted to try to mimic any of the amazing styles that frankly you or our mutual friend Mark Hunter or any of the great sales authors have followed out there. I wanted to do something completely different. I created years ago a fictional protagonist that I threw into all these situations. And I wrote a few books about him. And then in Salesman on Fire, I interviewed this person, and so there's a lot it's just very story based. The
Yeah.
show must go on for me was really what the 5 year I mean, it's look, I am married with 3 kids and I have a full-time job that keeps me very, very busy. I don't have a ton of time. This was a 5-year labor of love. But
Mhm.
why it was important to me was because over the last 5 years, and what's funny is my late 20s, early 30s, when I wrote my first book, I had the audacity to think I had anything pertinent to say about sales leadership. I was dead wrong. Um, I've learned so much. I've learned so
Yeah.
much about the changing ecosystem, the importance of relationships, how to really be successful in enterprise selling and as an enterprise sales leader, how to incorporate branding into sales. I've had a lot of these experiences, and I also know that I'm a unique element in the sales ecosystem because I'm still actually out there doing it. I've got a
Yeah.
quota. I'm leading a sales team. I'm actually out prospecting and having these conversations with executives. So I felt like I had a unique perspective. The show must go on is very story driven, but the reason that it's called that was because in the pandemic and amidst some of the gnarliest deals that I've ever had to negotiate in my entire career, like I was fried. I was burnt out. I was exhausted. I was tired of all this virtual and this uncertainty and this shift from what I had used to do every day, the suit and tie, going to the office, and I had to transition to a virtual seller. Um, almost overnight. And so the things that I've learned, the things that helped me be successful and how I got through all of that time and not only got through it, but thrived and took, up leveled during that time. And so it's legitimately named after the song by Queen. I would legitimately, before I knew that I was going to have to go into these excruciating negotiations with customers or situations where because I prospected above the mid-level folks that, we had historically only worked with, and I insisted on going to the board or the C-level, and these guys were mad at me and they were reading me the riot act. I would listen to that song before I would go into these calls to put myself in the mindset where I could literally do anything, no matter how exhausted I was, no matter how burnout I was, and I got through it. So that it was just a very personal story and time of my life for me. And I published my entire $1 billion Moneyball playbook for the whole
It's
world to see.
yeah, it's
People
incredible.
people think it's weird that it's like, Carson, why in the world would you publish all this stuff that you've done, like step by step, that anybody your competitors can read and do? I was like, because I don't think they will.
They won't.
I dare my competitors to try to do that stuff. Would love to see it. And frankly, I think it's good for the game. I did it for love of the game. I love sales. Sales has been really good to me. I met my wife in sales. I have everything I have because of sales. So I did it for the love of the game, Meredith.
I love that too, that I heard a guy speak, it'll date me. It was right when LinkedIn came out, and he was
Yeah.
doing a session on LinkedIn and Facebook, and somebody raised how to use it, and somebody raised their hand and said, "I think this is a complete waste of time." And he said, "It is a waste of time, but there will be a time when if you don't know how to do it, you'll be so far behind." Another guy raised his hand and said, "Why are you sharing all your secrets?" He said, "Because first of all, most of you will never do it." He
Mm,
said, "The other is by sharing everything I've got, I have to go off this stage and I gotta get better." And
wow.
he said, "I'm giving away everything I got because it forces me to up my game." And I those things are just things that I've always remembered, things that really separate people.
That's so good.
Yeah,
I think about that too. It's the ability to traverse through times that are extremely uncertain and to keep your wits about you and
yeah,
to continue to up level. I think about like at this stage in my life and in my career. I mean, I've achieved just about everything that I could possibly have ever wanted, but the show goes on. You still have to keep reinventing and adapting and evolving. And, that's not I mean, that's not easy to do. It's, you have to keep coming back day after day. Um, but what I think is pertinent about that is continuing to look at different facets and elements of yourself as a seller and as a leader. Like, how can I continue to learn from maybe that thing that went awry or that experience? Or how can I shore up blind spots? And then, frankly, how can you teach? How can you instill? And that's what I love about you. That's what I love about Mark, Mike Weinberg, all the greats. It's how can we've learned so many amazing things. I'm all about like, how can I, instill that in someone else? What's fascinating to me? Somebody reached out to me this week that is actually the kid of a gentleman that worked for me years ago,
wow.
and he just graduated college. And it's funny because the guy that worked for me, he reached out and he's like, "I walked into my kid's room the other day, and all of your books are in his room. Like, how did that happen?" And I've talked to his kid, and what's amazing to me, Meredith, it's like he's going down this path and he's taking these little bits and pieces. We're all investing back into this grand ecosystem. I think of sales as a noble profession, and I think of us as like the noble knights of the sales game. And if you can pass along the right ethical, innovative ways of doing it, and we can continue to instill that in the next generation of folks that are going to do it, I think that is an enduring legacy, and that makes it all worthwhile. If somebody can learn from the mistakes that I made so that they don't have to make them, so be it. Like that fulfills me a great deal.
One of the biggest things I feel like I hearing you say that I think is so powerful and so important is that you do a lot of self-analyzation. What
Mm.
worked in the last quarter? What didn't work? And like, it's not a process, a design it, and that's going to be it. It is in constant flux and constant change.
I'm very intentional about some of the stuff that's on my wall. So this is from The Color of Money, which I have deemed as the greatest sales movie of all time. And then you've got Rocky Balboa, and there's a
Yeah.
quote there. I consider myself the Rocky Balboa of sales because I've been knocked down so many times and I just refuse to stay on the mat. But The Color of Money, he talks about, being a student and, being a student of human moves in that case and really understanding the art of the game. And I view sales the same way. If you intentionally study the things that worked, I had 1 year that I didn't make goal in my life, and it was my first year as an enterprise account executive. And I could tell you all the reasons that it didn't happen that I felt were unfair, but that's irrelevant. Like I
Yeah.
had one foot out the door after that. I got insufficient results on my appraisal. I got no rewards, no bonus, no raise. And I was basically branded like a washout. And like keep in mind, this is after I wrote 2 books and had an extremely successful career at AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile. And I was done in a lot of people's eyes. And I basically went back and I studied that year and I leaned in. I was like, what worked? And I'm going to really double down on that. I also looked at what didn't. What were some of the meetings, maybe the cadences, the practices that I took that didn't lead me anywhere? I'm
Right.
dumping them. And I just bet big on what was working. And what was amazing was that first year, I had developed this penchant for social selling. I created a lot of executive relationships. It went over like gangbusters and it all landed in year 2. And also what I started to nurture with the existing engine took off. I won the biggest award in the company. And so, like, it transformed my career from there,
Yeah.
and from there, it's been, promotion after award after award, but you have to have those seminal, pivotal, crucible moments in your career where it's like, you're either gonna make the decision to fold and lay down and go look for something else, which don't get me wrong, it crossed my mind, but I was intentional about studying what worked and what didn't, and I used that to build a whole new playbook going forward, and
And if you'd performed okay, you may not have been driven to really redesign. There is such a gift in failure, right? I mean, I liken it a lot to people who struggle to understand it. I'll say, it's like going on a diet. You've been incredibly healthy, you're doing everything you need to do, and then you have that night where you drink a little too much, you eat a little too much, and as bummed out as you are that you did that, it almost, like, forces you back on the diet to another level, right? Like, you get even more serious, and I think about the times in my life when I've really struggled in sales or I haven't finished where I wanted to finish or something. It's almost like this gift that shoots me in the backside to go, "I can do this. I'm better than this."
I love that.
You know?
I think, and I've had conversations with colleagues about this. I think every seller, or really anybody in your career. I mean, you start out, you might have the greats have a chip on their shoulder
Yeah.
of some sort. For me, I was an only child. I grew up in a small town. I just wanted to make my parents proud. Do whatever, make money, and I found sales. Accidentally got into sales and found that I was good at it because I could talk fast and type fast and listen, and it worked. And I built momentum from here and there. But over time, it became more about um, you know when you start to accumulate the doubters and the naysayers, like when people tell you that can't be done or this is
Yeah.
a huge problem that nobody can solve, it's like a light went off in my head. Challenge accepted. If I can do that, wow. And I kept gravitating toward these big goals and taking big swings. And I didn't knock them all down. I knocked down a lot of them. And then you look back at a stage here where, I mean, I've probably got fewer days ahead in my career than I have behind, but I'm very grateful for all these amazing experiences, and now I get this opportunity to impart that wisdom for others.
And that to me is a lot of what went into or what I learned from The Show Must Go On,
Yeah.
that you got obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and you just kept pushing through it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been laid off. I've been multiple times. There was a job created for me one time that was literally, created for me and then given to somebody else.
Wow.
I won the biggest award in the company, and by the end of the week, my role no longer existed, and I got moved into another gig. Like, just crazy stuff. And I mean, amidst all that, like, personal challenges, you have family, you have wife and kids, like things happen. There's health scares, there's, all kinds of stuff that can happen. It's like I lead I would probably say a relatively normal average existence in a lot of ways where, I grapple with a lot of the same challenges as a lot of people. It's just you have a decision every conversation, every day, every week, every quarter, every month, bring your best self. And I try to do that no matter what. That for me is the show must go on. Inside my heart is breaking, my
Yeah.
makeup may be flaking, but my smile stays on. And that is how I show up.
Yeah. So it is hard to believe we're at the end of this podcast. I always like to end it with 2 questions. You can answer them any way you want to. How do people find you? How do they find your books? I really, really encourage people. I think you should read both, Salesman on Fire and then The Show Must Go On. They're such a great partnership. I mean, I feel like one kind of bled, right in to the other. But how do they find out about you? How do they follow you? All the good information that you put out there? And then what is your greatest advice? Again, you and I started the show by talking about the fact that we are in some of the most volatile times
Mm.
we have ever experienced. And it sure as heck doesn't look like it is going to slow down. What is your greatest advice to somebody who may be struggling out there or really wants 2025 to be their best year on record?
I love it. Thank you, Meredith. This is awesome. I always love our
Me
conversations.
too.
Love everything that you're doing. Keep it up. The people can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. I legitimately love having conversations with other sellers and sales leaders. It's very fulfilling for me. My books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Best advice a mentor told me this years ago, and it stuck with me. Actually, two things. Number one, your network is your net worth. And second, control the controllables.
Yeah.
And so when I think about your network as your net worth, when I got laid off years ago, I thought I could take my really successful director of sales experience where I won all these awards and just walk right into my next gig. And I was dead wrong. Every move I've ever made in my career and every great deal that I've ever created in my career and landed has been because of relationships, except for maybe one, and that was because of reputation. These are things that you have some control over. I always want to know if somebody's better than me, performing better than me, I want to meet them. I want to know
Oh,
exactly,
all day long.
and I want to assimilate what they're doing into my arsenal, makes me better, up level, upskill, and control the controllables. You're not always going to be able to control stuff. Sometimes you're going to be white knuckling your year and you're just holding on for dear life. I mean, I've seen some folks whose years have been going very strong and then something changes and then it implodes. You can't lose your cool. You've got to keep a steady hand on the wheel. That is sometimes all you can control. Um, I've benefited a lot the last couple of years reading a lot of Ryan Holiday, Simon Sinek, really being intentional about mindset, but also like, mastering the moment. And so, you can control the controllables. That is how you show up. That is how you reach out. That is how you connect with others. That is how you execute sales fundamentals. And that's how you ultimately run your process and your sales cycle. Those things have stuck with me. And no matter how crazy things get, I focus on those things and they've led me far.
It's amazing to me. I really don't want the audience to lose this. If you focus on what you can control and you let everything else go, and that is so simple to say, it is not easy to do, but the more that you can do that, it is amazing how focusing on what you can control will follow you through. It will get you to a place that you didn't even know existed.
Every activity has probability and odds behind it.
Yeah.
So the reason that I keep swinging when it comes to prospecting, when it comes to chasing deals, running deals through a cycle, going out, reaching out to potential mentors, potential future hiring managers, they all have probabilities. I can control the quality of my message, the quantity of my outreaches, and my consistency. And you better believe I control those things. And if I keep swinging, eventually I'm going to hit a home run.
Yeah, it's the reason I named my company Motion First because I believe if you move, you'll find the power. All right, Carson, I could stay here and talk to you all day, as always. So we will do this for sure, again. But I really want to encourage people, if you have not followed Carson, if you do not know his books, you really need to go. You really, really, if you are in sales, if you are in business, truly, Salesman on Fire and The Show Must Go On, really two incredibly powerful reads and things that are going to help you turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.